Hello, everyone! Today, we are going to listen to the story Animal Farm. This famous story was written by George Orwell in 1945. On a quiet farm in the English countryside, there lived many animals under the care of a farmer named Mr. Jones. The farm was called Manor Farm, and it looked peaceful from the outside. But inside, the animals were often hungry and tired because Mr. Jones did not always take good care of them. He sometimes forgot to feed them on time, and he often drank too much. The animals worked hard every day, yet they received very little in return. Deep inside their hearts, they all felt something was wrong, even if they did not know how to change their lives. One evening, an old pig named Old Major called all the animals together in the big barn. He was very wise and respected by everyone on the farm. The animals slowly came into the barn and sat quietly around him. The horses stood near the front. The cows lay down in the straw, and even the chickens found places to sit on the wooden beams. They all felt something important was about to happen. Old Major looked at them kindly and began to speak. Old Major told the animals that their lives were full of suffering and hard work. He explained that they worked every day, but humans took almost everything they produced. The cows gave milk, the chickens laid eggs, and the horses worked in the fields. Yet the animals themselves stayed poor and hungry. He said the reason for their suffering was simple. Humans were their enemy. Humans did not produce food, but they took food from animals. The animals listened carefully as Old Major spoke with strong emotion. He told them that one day they must rise up and remove humans from the farm. When humans were gone, the animals would finally be free and equal. No animal would work for another. No animal would be hungry. His words filled the barn with hope and excitement. For the first time, many animals imagined a different future. Old Major also taught them a special song called Beasts of England. The song spoke about freedom and happiness for all animals. It described a future where animals lived together in peace without human control. The animals quickly learned the song and began singing it together with great energy. Their voices grew louder and stronger as they sang. That night, the barn was filled with dreams of a better life. Just a few days later, Old Major died peacefully in his sleep. The animals were very sad, but they remembered his message. After his death, 3 young pigs began to think carefully about his ideas. Their names were Snowball, Napoleon, and Squealer. They were intelligent animals and good at explaining things to others. They decided to continue Old Major's dream and began teaching the animals about freedom. Snowball was active and full of ideas. He liked to organize meetings and explain plans. Napoleon was quieter, but he watched everything carefully and thought deeply. Squealer was very good at speaking and could make difficult ideas sound simple. Together, they worked hard to prepare the animals for the day when they would take control of the farm. They called their new way of thinking animalism. At first, it was not easy to teach the animals these new ideas. Some animals did not fully understand what freedom meant. Others were afraid of change. The pigs explained again and again that life without humans would be better. Slowly, the animals began to believe them. Even the slow and gentle horseboxer listened carefully and tried his best to understand. One evening, something unexpected happened. Mr. Jones forgot to feed the animals because he had been drinking too much. The animals became very hungry and upset. Finally, they could not wait any longer. They broke into the food storage room and began eating. When Mr. Jones and his workers tried to stop them with whips, the animals suddenly became brave. Together, they pushed the humans off the farm. The humans ran away quickly, and the animals chased them to the gate. Then they closed the gate behind them. For the first time in their lives, the animals were alone on the farm without any humans. They could hardly believe what had happened. They walked around the farm slowly, looking at everything with new eyes. The farm now belonged to them. The animals felt excited and proud of their victory. They decided to change the name of the farm from Manor Farm to Animal Farm. It was now their home, their land, and their future. They also entered the farmhouse and looked at the strange objects inside. The pigs explained that these objects showed the old human life they must never follow. So the animals promised not to live like humans. Soon after, the pigs painted 7 important rules on the wall of the big barn. These rules were called the 7 Commandments. They explained how animals should live together in peace and equality. One rule said that all animals were equal. Another rule said that no animal should sleep in a bed. These rules helped the animals remember Old Major's dream every day. The animals began working together in the fields with great energy. They harvested more food than ever before. Everyone worked as hard as they could, because they were working for themselves now. Boxer became the strongest worker on the farm. Whenever there was a difficult task, he said, "I will work harder." His strength and kindness inspired the others. Snowball organized many groups to help animals learn new skills. He tried to teach the sheep to read simple letters. He also helped the hens and ducks feel included in the work. Napoleon, however, did not show much interest in these groups. Instead, he quietly took 9 small puppies away from their mothers. He said he would educate them himself. No one questioned him, but some animals felt curious about this decision. At the same time, the cows produced a large amount of fresh milk. The animals were happy and proud of their success. They wondered what would happen to the milk. Napoleon told them not to worry, and said the milk would be taken care of. Later, when the animals returned from working in the fields, the milk had disappeared. No one spoke about it, but some animals quietly wondered where it had gone. Life on Animal Farm continued with hope and strong effort. The animals believed they were building a fair and happy future together. Yet slowly, small changes began to appear, and not every animal noticed them at first. Snowball started making plans for new improvements on the farm, including something very special that he believed would change their lives forever. Snowball believed the animals could make their lives much easier if they built a windmill on the farm. He explained that the windmill could create electricity one day. With electricity, there could be light in the barns during winter nights, warm water, and machines to help with heavy work. Many animals did not fully understand how electricity worked, but they trusted Snowball's ideas. They listened carefully as he drew plans on the floor of the barn using a piece of chalk. Napoleon did not like Snowball's plan. He often watched Snowball quietly during meetings, and he did not say much at first, but later he stood up and said the windmill was a bad idea. He told the animals that they should focus only on growing more food. He said building a windmill would waste time and energy. The animals became confused because both pigs sounded confident. They did not know which one was right. Every Sunday morning, the animals gathered in the big barn for meetings. During these meetings, they discussed plans for the farm and voted on important decisions. Snowball and Napoleon often disagreed with each other. Snowball spoke with energy and clear ideas, while Napoleon spoke less, but always watched the animals closely. Slowly, the meetings became more tense, and the animals began to feel unsure about what would happen next. One Sunday morning, Snowball spoke again about the windmill. He explained his plan in great detail and showed how it could help everyone in the future. Many animals began to feel excited again. Just when they were ready to vote, something shocking happened. Napoleon suddenly stood up and made a strange sound. At once, 9 large dogs ran into the barn. The animals were frightened because they had never seen these dogs before. The dogs ran straight toward Snowball with loud growls. Snowball tried to escape quickly. He ran across the yard as fast as he could, and the dogs chased him closely. The animals watched in silence as Snowball ran through the gate and disappeared from the farm forever. No one ever saw him again. After this moment, Napoleon stood in front of the animals calmly. He told them that from now on, there would be no more meetings on Sunday mornings. He said that meetings wasted time and caused confusion. Instead, a group of pigs would make all decisions for the farm. The animals were surprised, but they did not know what to say. The dogs stood quietly near Napoleon, and this made everyone feel nervous. Squealer soon spoke to the animals with his smooth and friendly voice. He explained that Napoleon was making these changes for their safety. He said that Snowball had actually been a dangerous enemy of the farm. According to Squealer, Snowball had always planned to harm Animal Farm. The animals felt confused because they remembered Snowball working very hard before. Still, they trusted Squealer's words because he sounded very sure. Not long after Snowball's disappearance, Napoleon surprised everyone again. He announced that the windmill would be built after all. The animals did not understand why he had changed his mind, but Squealer explained that Napoleon had secretly supported the plan from the beginning. He said Napoleon only pretended to disagree with Snowball as part of a clever plan. The animals accepted this explanation, even though some of them quietly felt unsure. Building the windmill was very hard work. The animals had to carry heavy stones from the quarry at the top of the hill. They worked long hours from morning until evening. Boxer became the strongest worker of all. He pulled large stones with all his strength and never complained. Whenever he felt tired, he repeated his new saying, "Napoleon is always right." His loyalty encouraged the other animals to continue working. The pigs did not work in the fields like the other animals. Instead, they said their job was to organize and manage the farm. They spent most of their time inside the farmhouse. At first, the animals remembered that one of the commandments said animals should not sleep in beds. But later, Squealer explained that the rule actually meant animals should not sleep in beds with sheets. Since the pigs removed the sheets, he said there was no problem. Winter came, and the wind grew very strong across the farm. One night, there was a terrible storm. The windmill, which the animals had worked so hard to build, fell down completely. In the morning, the animals stood silently near the broken stones. They felt very sad and tired when they saw the damage. It seemed like all their hard work had been lost. Napoleon walked slowly around the broken windmill and looked at the ground carefully. Then he suddenly said that Snowball had returned during the night and destroyed the windmill. He told the animals that Snowball was their enemy and must be punished. The animals felt shocked and angry when they heard this. They believed Napoleon's words because they trusted him. Without waiting, Napoleon ordered the animals to rebuild the windmill. This time, he said the walls must be thicker and stronger. The animals worked even harder than before. They often worked extra hours on Sundays, and sometimes they received less food than before. Still, they continued working because they believed their efforts would bring a better future. At the same time, Napoleon began making new agreements with humans outside the farm. At first, the animals remembered that they were not supposed to have contact with humans. But Squealer explained that this rule had never really existed. He told them that trading with humans was necessary for the farm's success. Slowly, the animals accepted this change too. One day, Napoleon announced that Animal Farm would sell some eggs to humans. The hens were very upset when they heard this news. They did not want to give their eggs away. In protest, they flew up to the roof of the barn and dropped their eggs onto the ground. The eggs broke into pieces below. Napoleon became very angry and ordered that the hens should not receive food until they obeyed him. The hens became weak after several days without food. Finally, they could not continue their protest. They agreed to give their eggs as Napoleon demanded. The other animals watched quietly and felt sad, but they were afraid to speak. The dogs always stayed near Napoleon, and their presence made everyone careful with their words. Life on the farm slowly became more difficult. The animals worked harder than ever before, but they often felt hungry and tired. Still, Squealer continued to tell them that life was much better now than before the rebellion. He showed them numbers and reports to prove his point. Most animals did not understand the numbers, but they wanted to believe him. One evening, Napoleon called all the animals to the yard for an important meeting. The animals gathered together quietly, not knowing what would happen next. The air felt heavy and serious. Suddenly, the dogs ran forward again, and something very frightening began to happen. The animals stood close together in the yard, feeling nervous as the dogs ran forward and surrounded them. Napoleon stood on a raised place near the barn door and looked at everyone with cold, serious eyes. Then he called several animals to come forward. To everyone's surprise, 4 pigs stepped slowly out of the group. They looked afraid and confused. The dogs stood close behind them and did not allow them to move away. Napoleon spoke in a strong voice and said the 4 pigs had secretly worked with Snowball to destroy Animal Farm. The pigs tried to speak, but they were too frightened to say much. Soon, they admitted they had made mistakes and asked for forgiveness. Before anyone could understand what was happening, the dogs attacked them. The animals watched in horror as the pigs were killed right there in the yard. No animal had ever seen something like this before. After that, more animals were called forward. Some hens came forward and said they had followed Snowball's orders in their dreams. A goose admitted she had hidden extra grain. A sheep said she had once urinated in the drinking water. Each animal confessed something small or strange, but after each confession, the dogs attacked them too. The yard became silent except for the sound of fear and confusion. The animals could not believe what they were seeing. When everything was over, the remaining animals walked slowly back to the barn. They felt very sad and very tired. They lay close together in the straw without speaking. They remembered the early days after the rebellion, when they had dreamed of freedom and equality. Life now felt very different from what they had hoped. Still, they did not know what they could do. That evening, the animals began to sing "Beasts of England" softly. The song reminded them of their dream for a better life. But suddenly, Squealer arrived with 2 dogs beside him. He told them that Napoleon had decided the song was no longer needed. He said the rebellion was now finished, and the song was no longer important. From that day on, the animals were not allowed to sing it again. Time passed, and the animals continued their hard work on the windmill. They worked through cold days and warm days without rest. Boxer worked harder than anyone else. Even as he grew older, he never stopped helping. His body became thinner, but his spirit stayed strong. Whenever he felt weak, he repeated his favorite saying, "I will work harder." The other animals respected him deeply for his loyalty. One day, while pulling heavy stones for the windmill, Boxer suddenly fell to the ground. He tried to stand up again, but his legs were too weak. The animals gathered around him with worried faces. They knew Boxer had always been the strongest worker, and now he could not move. Napoleon said he would send Boxer to a doctor in the nearby town to help him recover. A few days later, a large cart arrived at the farm to take Boxer away. The animals stood near the gate to say goodbye. But as the cart began to move, Benjamin the donkey looked closely at the writing on its side. He suddenly became very upset and shouted to the others that the cart belonged to a horse butcher. The animals ran after the cart and called Boxer's name, asking him to escape. Boxer tried to kick the door of the cart, but he was too weak. Soon, the cart disappeared down the road. Later that evening, Squealer spoke to the animals and said Benjamin had made a mistake. He explained that the cart had once belonged to a butcher, but was now owned by a doctor. He said Boxer had received the best care before he died peacefully in the hospital. The animals felt sad, but tried to believe his words. They trusted Napoleon and believed he would never harm Boxer. Not long after Boxer's death, the pigs began to behave more and more like humans. They started walking on 2 legs instead of 4. The sheep were surprised at first, but soon they began repeating a new saying. Instead of saying, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, they now said, 4 legs good, 2 legs better. The other animals felt confused when they heard this change. One evening, the animals saw something even more surprising. The pigs invited human farmers to visit Animal Farm. The humans and pigs walked together around the farm and talked like old friends. Later, they all went into the farmhouse for dinner. The other animals stood outside and looked through the window quietly. They watched as the pigs and humans laughed together and shared food at the same table. As the animals watched, they noticed something strange. The pigs looked more and more like humans. They wore clothes, carried whips, and spoke in the same way as the farmers. The animals felt confused because they could no longer see a clear difference between pigs and humans. It was hard to understand how things had changed so much over time. Then the animals looked again at the 7 commandments written on the barn wall. They saw that the words had changed. Now there was only one rule left. It said that all animals were equal, but some animals were more equal than others. The animals did not fully understand this sentence, but they felt something was very wrong. Inside the farmhouse, the pigs and humans continued their dinner. They spoke about working together and helping each other in the future. Napoleon stood up and gave a speech. He said the name of the farm would change again. It would no longer be called Animal Farm. It would return to its old name, Manor Farm. Outside the window, the animals watched quietly. They looked from pig to human, and from human to pig again. But now it was impossible to tell the difference between them. Slowly, they understood that their dream of equality had disappeared. The future they had hoped for long ago was gone, and so the animals stood together in silence, remembering old Major's words and the early days of hope. They had wanted freedom and fairness, but instead they found themselves living in the same kind of life as before. Only now the rulers were different. This is how the story of Animal Farm reminds us how important it is to protect truth, fairness, and equality, because without them, even the strongest dreams can slowly change into something else.